The humid night air of East Texas usually carries the scent of pine and the sound of cicadas, but on the early morning of June 7, 1998, it bore witness to a darkness that would stain the town of Jasper forever. A 49-year-old man was walking home after a family anniversary party, his footsteps light on the asphalt of Huff Creek Road, unaware that a gray pickup truck was approaching with 3 men, whose hearts were filled with a poison older than the trees surrounding them. What began as a simple walk home ended in a crime so depraved it would force a nation to look into the mirror and confront the monster of modern-day lynching. Remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of The Calendar of Crime. Before we carry on with the story, James Byrd Jr. was more than just a victim. He was a father of 3, a talented musician who loved to play the piano and trumpet, and a man known for his infectious laugh and friendly disposition. Born and raised in Jasper, he was a familiar face in the community, often seen walking the streets because he didn't own a car. Despite the struggles of his past, including a few run-ins with the law, James was a man who cherished his family and his roots in the deep East Texas soil, a place where history and tradition often collided with the harsh realities of the present. Jasper, Texas, in the late 90s, was a town of about 8,000 people, a place where everyone knew their neighbors, yet a quiet, simmering tension often lay beneath the surface. It was a town divided by more than just railroad tracks. It was a place where the shadows of the Old South still lingered in the minds of some. While many residents worked together in the local timber mills, the social fabric was fragile, and the arrival of extremist ideologies, in the form of white supremacist groups, was beginning to tear at the edges of this small-town peace. On that fateful Saturday night, James had been celebrating at a friend's house, enjoying the company of loved ones. As the party wound down, he decided to walk the few miles back to his home. The roads were dark, illuminated only by the occasional porch light and the moon hanging low in the sky. James was a man of peace, someone who saw the best in people, which is perhaps why he didn't hesitate when a truck pulled over. And the 3 men inside offered him a ride. He climbed into the back, thinking he was merely catching a break from the long walk. The men in the truck were Shawn Berry, Lawrence Brewer, and John King. Brewer and King were avowed white supremacists who had met in prison, where they had joined a racist gang. They weren't just looking to give someone a ride, they were looking for a target. As the truck turned away from the direction of James's home and headed toward a remote, wooded area known as Huff Creek Road, the atmosphere inside shifted from casual to predatory. James, realizing something was wrong, could do little as the vehicle sped deeper into the darkness. At a secluded clearing, the 3 men dragged James from the truck. What followed was a brutal and sustained assault that defied human comprehension. They beat him mercilessly, using their boots and fists to break his spirit and his body. The attackers, fueled by a toxic cocktail of hatred and extremist ideology, showed no mercy as James pleaded for his life. The quiet woods, once a place of natural beauty, became the stage for a ritualistic display of cruelty that sought to strip James of his dignity before taking his life. In an act of unimaginable savagery, the men took a heavy logging chain and wrapped it around James's ankles. They attached the other end to the trailer hitch of the pickup truck. With James still conscious and fighting for his life, the truck began to move. For 3 agonizing miles, James was dragged behind the vehicle along the rough, uneven surface of the Asphalt Road. Forensic evidence would later show that he tried to keep his head up, desperately attempting to survive the ordeal as his body was torn apart by the relentless friction of the pavement. The dragging continued until James's body struck a concrete culvert, an impact so violent that it resulted in his decapitation and the loss of his right arm. The 3 men then dumped the remains of his torso in front of a black cemetery on Huff Creek Road, a final, chilling message of racial hatred. They drove away, leaving a trail of blood, clothing, and personal items that stretched for miles, a macabre map of the atrocity they had committed in the dead of night. The discovery the next morning sent shockwaves through the community of Jasper and the entire world. Police officers arriving at the scene were met with a sight that looked like something out of a horror movie. A trail of evidence, a wrench with Berry engraved on it, a lighter, and even a set of keys, led investigators directly to the suspects. The sheer brutality of the crime made it clear that this was no ordinary murder. It was a calculated act of hate designed to terrorize and divide. The investigation was swift, and within days, Shawn Berry, Brewer, and John King were in custody. The evidence against them was overwhelming. DNA, physical items left at the scene, and the testimony of witnesses who saw them with James earlier that night painted a damning picture. As the details of the crime emerged, the nation watched in horror, struggling to understand how such primitive hatred could exist in the closing years of the 20th century. The trials that followed were a landmark in Texas legal history. For the first time since the Reconstruction era, white men were facing the death penalty for the murder of a black man in Texas. The courtroom was filled with tension as prosecutors detailed the white supremacist ties of Brewer and King, showing their tattoos and extremist literature as evidence of their motive. The defense tried to downplay the racial element, but the sheer depravity of the act spoke louder than any legal argument. In the end, justice was served, though it could never bring James back. Lawrence Brewer and John King were sentenced to death, while Shawn Berry received a life sentence. Brewer was executed in 2011, and King followed in 2019. The trials and the subsequent executions brought a sense of closure to the legal proceedings, but the emotional scars on the Byrd family and the town of Jasper remained deep. The case became a rallying cry for activists and lawmakers who demanded better protection against hate-motivated violence. The legacy of James Byrd Jr. lives on in the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act, signed into law by President Barack Obama in 2009. This landmark legislation expanded federal hate crime law to include crimes motivated by a victim's actual or perceived gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. James's tragic death became the catalyst for a law that seeks to ensure that no one else has to suffer the same fate because of who they are or the color of their skin. Today, a memorial stands in Jasper to honor the memory of James Byrd Jr., a reminder of the man he was and the tragedy that took him. His family has worked tirelessly to turn their pain into purpose, advocating for peace and understanding through the James Byrd Jr. Foundation for Racism. While the events of June 7, 1998, will always be a dark chapter in history, the response to that darkness has been a flickering light of hope, proving that, even in the face of absolute hatred, the human spirit can strive for justice and healing. As we look back on the life and death of James Byrd Jr., we are reminded that the fight against prejudice is far from over. His story is a call to action, a plea for us to stand up against hatred in all its forms, and to cherish the common humanity that binds us all. By remembering James, we ensure that his death was not in vain, and that the lessons learned from that terrible night in Jasper continue to guide us toward a more just and compassionate future. Thanks for watching. Please comment, share, like, and subscribe for future episodes from the Calendar of Crime.